Chairman Carr, you are not reinvigorating the public interest standard. You are weaponizing the public interest standard. That is what the Carr FCC is doing every single day. Behind me are your past tweets declaring your commitment to the First Amendment. You even defended political satire, saying in 2022, it challenges those in power, and that's why people in influential positions have always targeted it for censorship. That's why your threats against ABC and Disney over Jimmy Kimmel's political monologue were so outrageous. And here's what you said. In September of 2025, as the chairman of the FCC, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct or take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead. Now, that statement was roundly condemned across the political spectrum. Chairman Cruz called it dangerous as hell. Chairman Carr, do you regret making that statement, yes or no?
Senator Markey, thank you for the question. My job is to enforce the law as passed by Congress. That includes a public interest standard, and broadcast TV is fundamentally different than any other media. We have a news distortion rule.
Do you regret making that statement?
Senator, my job is to enforce the law.
So you don't regret making that statement? Well, that's a refusal to take accountability for your language, for your use, your abuse of power. You will not say that you made a mistake. For example, in your response to my oversight letter in September on the Kimmel incident, you repeatedly stated that the media companies made their own decisions in preempting and suspending Kimmel. You seem to think that your words, the most powerful communications regulator in America, especially your threats, don't matter. So just to be clear, your position is that your mafia threats had nothing to do with Nexstar and Sinclair and Disney's decisions to preempt and suspend Kimmel. Is that your position? Is that your point, that you had nothing to do with the suspension of Kimmel?
Senator, if you look at the evidence, the express statements by every single company involved, from Nexstar to Sinclair to Disney, as recently as last week, is that they made these business decisions on their own. The record is clear on this.
And again, you're refusing to take accountability for your own words. You intimidate the companies. They do what you want. And then you say, well, it was up to them. You're the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. Actually, you're now the chairman of the Federal Censorship Commission. And these broadcasters, they feel that censorship. You have broad authority over the media industry, especially broadcasters. Your words and actions matter. Now I'm going to give you another chance to take accountability for your actions. In 2022, you said, quote, a newsroom's decision about what stories to cover and how to frame them should be beyond the reach of any government official not targeted by them, by government officials. Do you stand by that statement?
This was a letter written by House Democrats to cable companies, pressuring them to drop Fox News, OAN, and Newsmax simply because those Democrats thought they were right-wing.
Do you stand by your statement?
Yes, I do. I think that's inappropriate what the Democrats did there.
Good. I just want to get your own views out here on the record for people to hear. So in February, under your leadership, the Federal Communications Commission opened an investigation into a San Francisco radio station over its coverage of a federal immigration raid. A FCC investigation is a big deal for a local station. In a worst-case scenario, the FCC could shut down the station by revoking its license. In fact, you have repeatedly suggested over the past year that the FCC could revoke station licenses. Yet this investigation was based solely on the news content of the radio station's coverage of an immigration raid. I have the entire news statement that they put out that day. This happens every day, everywhere across the country for broadcast journalists. This investigation was based solely on this very brief statement that is an everyday coverage. And I have that transcript. And the anchor was literally reporting on the information that was released by the mayor, by the local city council member, and a community group. So you're telling me that reporting on statements from public officials and a community group is grounds for an FCC investigation?
Senator, the concern there in the report was that there may have been interference with lawful ICE operations, and so we were asking questions about what happened. This was a period of time, remember, when ICE agents were being attacked, their locations, undercover locations were being disclosed.
There is nothing in here that discloses anything. There's no risk to anyone except.
And they can
the
provide
risk,
that to us.
No, the risk that it's posed here is to you, to the broadcast journalist coverage. That's what really happened. The news journalists were just covering an important news story. And some conservatives were upset by the coverage. So you use your power as FCC chair to hang a sword of Damocles over a local radio station's head. And that's precisely what you warned about in 2022, the government targeting a newsroom's editorial decision. Well, guess what happened? The station demoted the anchor who first read that news report over the air and pulled back on his political coverage. You got what you wanted. One former journalist at the station said, chilling effect does not begin to describe the neutering of our political coverage. That's what you wanted, that's what you got, but it affected stations everywhere. So just let me say again, the neutering of our political coverage, this is government censorship, plain and simple. Was it a mistake in retrospect for you to say that, to instigate an investigation of that San Francisco radio station? Was that a mistake?
Senator, if broadcasters understand, perhaps the first time in years, that they're going to be held accountable to the public interest, to broadcast hoax rules, to the news distortion policy, I think that's a good thing. I don't have a poster board, but listen, in 2018, you signed this letter right here to the FCC. You signed a letter to the FCC asking us to investigate Sinclair's news activities. You said investigate Sinclair's news activities. And you know what happened after that? Over 227 licenses were up for renewal or due during the Biden years. Almost none of them were renewed after your letter. Your letter produced the results that you were seeking.
Chairman Carr.
Madam Chair.
Well, you're well over your time here, so.
A lot of it is because.
Well, no, it's not, because I looked at the clock and you were already 2 minutes over.
All right, so I'll just finish, Madam Chair. He is turning the Federal Communications Commission into the Federal Censorship Commission. It's a betrayal of the FCC's mission. You should resign, Mr. Chairman. You are creating a chilling effect
Do you
on
regret sending us
broadcast
a letter in
journalism's
2018
ability.
asking the
Senator Markey,
FCC
please.
to investigate
There's a lot of people on
Sinclair's
this committee.
news activities?
Thank you.
Do you
Thank
regret
Chairman Carr,
sending us a letter
please
asking us to
please suspend.
investigate
Chairman
Sinclair's
Carr,
news
we'll move to the
activities?
next question. Senator Sullivan.
Thank you to all the commissioners. Thanks to the committee for conducting this hearing. Chairman Carr, you and I have actually known each other for maybe 10 years now. We've had several meetings in our office, and it's usually, I don't want to say mundane, but it's technocratic, it's technical, it's nonpartisan, and all the rest of it. And so I'm hoping
We can do that again right here. It's fine.
I'm hoping we can do that again right here, but it is a more sensitive topic. So I'm just going to ask you a couple of yes or no questions. I don't mind a quick explanation, but I'll make a promise to you not to hector you for 3 or 4 minutes if you can give me quick yes or no's or at least quick explanations. Chairman Cruz said, I think it is unbelievably dangerous for the government to put itself in the position of saying we're going to decide what speech we like and what we don't, and we're going to threaten to take you off the air if we don't like what you're saying. Do you see this issue the same way as the chairman?
Well, my position on this is pretty clear. We have a public interest standard that Congress has put into the law, and there's a number of very specific rules and doctrines that flow from that. The broadcast hoax rule, the news distortion rule.
So
and my position, and I think the Trump administration position, is that we should be enforcing those rules and policies. If Congress wants to change it, you're free to change it.
So you think you have jurisdiction over political satire under the public interest standard and the news distortion standard, just to put a fine point on it?
My position is
Just
that
about, that one is a yes or no. Do you
Well,
have jurisdiction or not?
we have jurisdiction with respect to the broadcast airwaves uniquely to ensure that their operations are in the public interest. And there's very specific rules there, broadcast hoax and news distortion.
So if there's a determination by the Federal Communications Commission that satire is not in the public interest, you believe you have the authority to revoke the license of the broadcaster?
That's not my position at all.
Okay.
My position is if the use of the
but
facilities
hold on,
isn't in
hold
the
on.
public
Let me
interest.
Then let me clarify the question.
Satire that's not broadcast hoax, that's not news distortion policy, is perfectly fine.
So,
But I also don't understand the conversation about what satire are we talking about? Where was there satire?
We're not doing the questions in this direction. What is the FCC standards for making this kind of evaluation about whether news has been distorted? My understanding is that this has been used 8 times. The chairman, and I think he's right, is saying, like, this is rarely invoked. And there's a reason for that, because yes, we have a statute that governs what the FCC is supposed to do, but basically the FCC has decided we need to get out of the business of refereeing what is offensive, and if something is indecent or obscene, that's one thing, right? If they're violating the terms of their broadcast license, that's another thing. If they just say an awful thing on the air, it seems to me, Chairman, that's not your jurisdiction. And I know you're quick and you understand this law backwards and forwards. I understand. I remember you when you were counsel for Chairman Pai. So I don't doubt your ability to race right into how the architecture of the originating statute. But I'm asking you, do you think it is appropriate for you to have an opinion at all in your official capacity about what a comedian says, as offensive as it may have been?
Senator, my job is to implement the law passed by Congress. And Congress has said that broadcast is fundamentally different, that there's a public interest standard.
Do you think there are
decades of precedent on this?
Do you think there are any conservative commentators or conservative comedians or conservative satirists that ever say anything offensive that you would consider investigating?
I'm not looking at things that are offensive or awful, to use your words. I'm looking at things that are consistent with our public interest rules and regulations. That's the full scope.
And in
of
what
we're looking
way?
at.
So I'm a little confused, because it seems to me that in subsequent conversations, I forgot, after Ted and John Thune and Dave McCormick and others said, "Oh, this seems like a little much for you, Chairman," that you went out and you said, "That was fake news. I didn't do that. This is fake news. I am not doing that. I'm not going after Jimmy Kimmel." And now you're saying you have a perfect right to go after Jimmy Kimmel, and I'm wondering which one it is.
No, two different things. Democrats at the time were saying that we explicitly threatened to pull a license if Jimmy Kimmel wasn't fired. That never happened. That was nothing more than projection and distortion by Democrats. What I am saying is any broadcaster that uses the airways, whether radio or TV, has to comply with the public interest in it. And licenses are not sacred cows. Yes, you can do things to lose a license. But if we want to change that, that's up to Congress. And one idea, for instance, is why don't we put all the broadcast TV licenses up for auction? And if people want to buy them without the public interest obligation, they can do that. But look, there was a bargain here.
I mean, you're kind of tiptoeing through the tulips here, right? Because what you actually said is they have a license granted by us at the FCC that comes with an obligation to operate in the public interest. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct and take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead. Chairman, my final comment is I have actually enjoyed our relationship. I have praised you behind your back as a solid, someone I disagree with, but solid, knowledgeable person. This stuff, at least up until the last year, has been out of character, and it will not age well. And it will not age well on the conservative side of the aisle and the liberal side of the aisle. This is not American FCC behavior, and I'm hoping we can recalibrate.
So let me try to understand this. Did you have an issue when Senator Markey told the FCC to investigate Sinclair for their news activities? Was there any issue raised there?
I'm going to allow this because I was tough on you. You did ask me a question. This is the first time I've ever going to respond to a question from a witness. I did not sign that letter.
Thank you. I would prefer to be asking questions about the bipartisan work that needs to be done on universal service and broadband and spectrum, and I'll ask that in writing. But the events of this year moved me to focus on free speech and our democracy. Chairman Carr, in 2022, you tweeted, "Political satire is one of the oldest and most important forms of free speech. It challenges those in power while using humor to draw more people into the discussion. That's why people in influential positions have always targeted it for censorship." Yes or no, do you still agree that political satire should be protected speech?
Yes, Senator. And whenever that satire or any other programming is over the public airways for broadcasters, there's a public interest standard. And there's a news distortion rule, a broadcast hoax rule,
You
a
answered it,
political
you answered it, yes, and I'm
equal
just,
opportunity rule.
I'm going to
But I
go
was-
on.
But I was clear, that particular instance, too, had to do with speech on social media, where Biden administrations were trying to shut down political speech. Again, an area where there is no
Okay,
license,
we'll
there's
get to
no
that.
public interest standard.
We'll get to
but
that in a
what
minute.
Robust, wide open
You know,
speech.
I believe, too, that there is no place in chilling political satire. But after Jimmy Kimmel's monologue, you went on a podcast and suggested that ABC should take Kimmel off the air, saying, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Those were your words. Do you think it is appropriate to use your position to threaten companies that broadcast political satire?
I think any licensee that operates on the public airwaves has a responsibility to comply with the public interest standard, and that's been the case for decades.
I asked if you think it's appropriate for you to use your position to threaten companies. And this incident with Kimmel wasn't an isolated event. You've launched investigations into every major broadcast network except Fox. Is that correct?
I don't know if that's true or not. We do have investigations going on NPR and PBS. We have a number of investigations that are ongoing. I think if you step back over the years, I think the FCC has walked away from enforcing the public interest standard, and I don't think that's a good thing.
Okay, you brought up social media. So do you think it's appropriate for after a horrific murder and the stabbing of Rob Reiner and his wife, do you think it's appropriate for someone to say that it happened when they know better, reportedly due to the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding, and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome? He was known to have driven people crazy by his raging obsession of President Donald J. Trump, with his obvious paranoia reaching new heights. Do you think that's appropriate for the President of the United States to do that? And if Jimmy Kimmel would have said that, would have you have threatened to take him off the air?
Senator, look, Democrats on this dais are accusing me of engaging in censorship, and now you're trying to encourage me to police speech on the internet. I'm simply not going to do it.
No, I'm just asking you.
Broadcast
These are the
television
kind of
is-
words, I think they are cruel. I think they hurt President Trump to say that kind of thing. I think it hurts him with trust from the American people. But this is the kind of stuff that's going on right now. And yet you are going after broadcast stations, except for Fox, and making threats.
Senator, we are applying the law. Let's step back. Broadcast TV is fundamentally different than any other forms of media, whether it's cable or podcast or soapbox or man on the street. There's a public trustee model that Congress has set up. When you were on a podcast—
there should be no rules in place when it comes to tech platforms then?
I think there's no public interest obligation. There is no license.
Do you think we
There's
should
no—
change the laws? Here's one.
There's no
Last
news
week, President Trump came out with this dangerous and likely illegal AI rule that preempts all the states from doing anything to try to save people, whether it is kids that are being exposed to content they shouldn't see, or fentanyl, or political videos that are lies. So do you think Congress has the authority to preempt state laws, or do you think President Trump and the agencies, like yourself, have the authority to preempt state law when it comes to the internet and safety with AI?
Well, when it comes to AI in particular, there's an executive order. It asks the FCC to initiate a proceeding. We're going to initiate a proceeding. We're open-minded on where that goes. But look, if you want to step back and talk about weaponization, we saw that for 4 years in the Biden administration. Senate Democrats, including
Joe
Democrats—
Biden is no longer president. You are head of the FCC, and Donald Trump is president, and I'm trying to deal with this right now. So I would ask you, Ms. Gomez, what are the risks of the commission trying to preempt state laws, particularly when there are no federal guardrails, because our colleagues, despite some good efforts, refuse to pass any kind of even minimal rules when it comes to AI? What are the risks of the commission or a president then trying to preempt state laws that can legally put state laws in place?
Thank you, Senator. I believe that the FCC has very dubious authority to actually preempt state laws in this case, because without a comprehensive federal framework, there is nothing for the FCC to preempt. The Communications Act did not actually talk about artificial intelligence or provide authority to the FCC to do this preemption. So I'm very dubious of our authority to do so. That said, we have sought comment on this.
Okay, thank you very much.
Another area of agreement between you and I is that Jimmy Kimmel is angry, overtly partisan, and profoundly unfunny. That, sadly, is true for most late-night comedians today, who seem to have been collectively broken by President Trump's election. Jimmy's remarks about Charlie Kirk were tasteless, and ABC and its affiliates would have been fully within their rights to fire him or simply to no longer air his program. That was their choice. But what government cannot do is force private entities to take actions that the government cannot take directly. Government officials threatening adverse consequences for disfavored content is an unconstitutional coercion that chills protected speech. This is why it was so insidious how the Biden administration jawboned social media into shutting down conservatives online over accurate information on COVID or voter fraud. My Democrat colleagues were persistently silent over that scandal, but I welcome them now having discovered the First Amendment in the Bill of Rights. Democrat or Republican, we cannot have the government arbitrating truth or opinion. Mr. Chairman, my question is this. So long as there is a public interest standard, shouldn't it be understood to encompass robust First Amendment protections to ensure that the FCC cannot use it to chill speech?
Yes, Senator, I agree with you there, and I think the examples you laid out of weaponization during the Biden years are perfect examples. The Fox case you mentioned was a renewal for a broadcast TV license, and petitioners sought to have the FCC not renew it based on content that aired on a separate cable channel. In the cable context, it's entirely different. There's no license, there's no public interest standard. So first and foremost, we have to make sure the FCC is hewing to precedent. Similarly, we saw Democrats in Congress write letters to cable companies, pressuring them to drop Fox News, OAN, and Newsmax because they disagreed with the political perspectives of those cable channels. And there, again, it was cable. No broadcast license, no public interest standard. So the FCC has to write within the four corners of our precedents to be consistent with the Communications Act and the First Amendment concerns as well.
Senator Lujan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Carr, yes or no, and please, yes or no, is the FCC an independent agency?
Senator, thanks for that question. I think that,
Yes or no is all we need, sir. Yes or no, is it independent?
well, there's a test for this in the law, and the key portion of that
Just
test.
yes or no, Brendan?
The key portion of that test
Okay,
is.
I'm going to go to Commissioner Trusty. So just so you know, Brendan, on your website, it just simply says, man, the FCC is independent. This isn't a trick question.
Okay, the FCC
it
is
yes or
not.
no?
Is not.
Okay.
Is not.
So
an
is your website
independent-
wrong? Is your website lying?
Possibly. The FCC is not an independent agency.
Okay, can I read this to
because-
you? The FCC's mission on the homepage of the FCC, man, an independent U.S. government agency overseen by Congress. Is that factual or is that a lie?
The FCC is not formally an independent
Is
agency.
this true or is this a lie?
I'm happy to answer your question.
Okay.
The sine qua non of
Thank you, Chairman. I'll
independence
get
is
back to you.
being removable by the president.
Chairman, I have a little bit of time. I'll get back to
The
you,
FCC is
sir.
not an independent agency, formally speaking.
Appreciate you saying that and being honest with the American people. Commissioner Trusty?
Senator, thank you for the question. The president is the chief executive vested with all executive power in our government, and FCC commissioners are not, we do not have for-cause removal protections, which means that we aren't independent.
So is your website lying?
I can't speak to the website, I've not seen that.
You all are the commissioners in charge of this place, right? So this stuff has to be approved by one of you. If this is lying, then you should just fix it. Let me just say that. That wasn't even my gotcha question. I'm surprised that I burned up 3 minutes talking about this damn thing. Commissioner Gomez?
Yes, and we should be.
I appreciate that. Well, Mr. Chairman, if I could just submit the printout of the homepage of the FCC into the record, man, it says it's an independent agency, and if it's not true, then change it.
Without objection.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to say, every so often in this place, it almost feels like you're having an out-of-body experience where you're like watching something happen and you can't believe it's happening. So the idea that my Democrat colleagues are so offended that the First Amendment may be or may not be violated by some comment you made, I think is just extraordinary given the last 4 years that we lived through. I happen to know something about it. I filed the Missouri versus Biden lawsuit that a federal judge ruled was the most massive attack against free speech in U.S. history, where entire agencies, and we sat through the depositions, were weaponized against the American people on the instruction of the federal government, and not just one agency, but a leviathan of agencies that had words and phrases that you shall not utter in the United States of America or you are censored. So you don't get to censor speech, you don't get to outsource that censorship to universities or social media companies, which is exactly what was happening. And go as so far as to actually create, and I would challenge anybody in this committee if they raise an objection to this, literally a disinformation governance board in the United States of America. You remember the Mary Poppins character who was singing? That's what I'm talking. In the United States of America, not like in 1898, not in 1799, like 3 years ago. And so to sit here and listen to all this stuff about, wearing the white hat on free speech is laughable. Laughable. So anyway, that's not, I can't help myself sometimes. I wanted to get to these questions first, but just listening to this is incredible. So anyway.
Subscribe to One India and never miss an update. Download the One India app now.